And there it is. Get ready. Oh, first Chat GPT is making a Tuesday night live rap. Yo, it's Tuesday night. We're feeling just right. Gather round friends in the Facebook light. We're going live. No stress, no strife. Bringing peace back to calm in the life. We're breathing deep. The flow of the fight. Find our center, our inner might. Close your eyes. Feel the vibe. Get in this moment. Truly alive. It's Tuesday night. Meditation and sky. On Facebook, where our spirits collide. Inhale the good. Exhale the tide. Our digital space pieces amplified. Tuning out the world, tuning in our soul in this mindful journey. We play the leading role. Let the music play. Let's take control, healing mind and body, making a whole. Guided by breath and serene control, we wander through thoughts, reach new goals. Feel the energy, head to soul. In a session, we're on a roll. Tuesday nights, we're calm as our goal. On Facebook Live, yeah, we're on a roll. Breathe in, breathe out, and let it console. In our meditation, we find control. From every corner of the earth, we unite in our virtual space of Tuesday night. Together, we meditate, reaching new heights in the world of chaos with guide and light. So join us live, set the scene in our digital sanctuary, calm and serene. Tuesday nights where we convene. In our Facebook meditation, we're the dream team. That was it. Chat GPT. Gonna write all of our songs in the future. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live. Your host, Seth the Infinity Monk, coming at you live from Woodland Hills, California. Letting some people arrive on the scene. How is everybody feeling this evening? Please let me know what is up, who's watching, and most importantly, if you guys have any questions for me. If there's anything that you would love to hear about, love to share about, anything that is going on in your lives that could use some support. I feed off of information from the outside, very oriented like that. So feel free to send me an energetic impulse, which will guide our ship this evening, and if not, I will still see what's going to come through. God, I love this music. It always gets me in the mood. So something that I can share, and I think I've probably mentioned this in the past, but I've been doing some Facebook interviews, and I've been chatting with people specifically who are in spiritual crisis. I am currently in the midst of building a virtual program, that can help support people who are in spiritual crisis. I'm still kind of figuring out some of the logistics of it. There will be some videos, there'll be some homework, there will be some processes. I want to share some tools. But I'm still in the phase of really trying to dial in, and I'm using my Facebook as like a bit of a laboratory at the moment to really ask people questions about being in spiritual crisis. I have my own experience of that. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I've been talking to a lot of people already, obviously. But specifically with the questions about being in spiritual crisis, it's helping me put together and form a program that's directly based off of people's needs, which I think is cool. As I've been asking people about being in spiritual crisis and what's kind of the hardest part, I've gotten kind of like lists of answers, but all of them for me have kind of come down to three different categories. And I don't know if this is true across the boards or this is just my specific audience or this is like a vibration of what I am being asked to share from the universe with my community. But the three categories that have come through for me to work with for people is one, the category of finding orientation. When people are in spiritual crisis, they feel like their life is falling apart. All of their familiar ways of being, of doing, their behaviors, maybe their jobs, everything, it's starting to not work anymore. It's starting to fall apart. So people are feeling like they need new orientation, but they don't know what it is. They don't know where to look for it. This causes a great deal of stress, of fear. So finding new orientation is one chunk. Chunk number two is feeling feelings that they don't want to feel. Whether those feelings have to do with past traumas that are coming to the surface to finally be looked at and resolved, whether as people are realizing that they're now, as they're changing into a new way of being, they're seeing that their old way of being was actually painful and they feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt around that. So people that are having trouble moving on, forgiving themselves, understanding, letting go. So having to really face and feel certain feelings, that's a whole chunk category. And then the third category that's been coming up, it's about relationships. And as people are changing and shifting, they then feel a fear that their relationships aren't going to be functional anymore. That they were loved and accepted because they were this one kind of person. And if I change, maybe my mom doesn't accept me anymore. Maybe my partner rejects me. Maybe my friends won't want to hang out with me. That if I change and I become different, I'm going to be carrying a different energetic signature. I'm going to have different wants and needs and likes. And necessarily my behaviors are going to change. And so my peer groups might change. My relationships might change. And there's this fear arising in people that they're going to be rejected, that they're going to be alone, abandoned, not liked or wanted anymore. So there's sometimes a hesitancy to change and to shift because we're afraid that we're going to lose our relations. So those are the three categories that people have been presenting me in different ways. And I've been able to pretty much group everything into one of these three. So it's either the loss of orientation, being faced with painful feelings, and the potential of losing relationships. So I'm going to be building my program around these things. And it kind of feels like there's an element of coming back to yourself. There's an element of being with yourself and rearranging some bits. And then there's an element of how do I take that back out into the world? So this is probably true of any retreat process, any course, even when you go to a yoga class, right? You come in there with a certain kind of energy, you do this work on the mat, you sort some things out. And by the time you leave, you're focused, you're in a new place energetically, you're ready to go. So what I'd love to talk about tonight for this, well, actually, if there's anybody that's watching that out of those three categories has one that they would like me to talk about specifically, you can right now send that in the text. I see there's a handful of you guys on Facebook. Would you like to hear about orientation? Would you like to hear about facing and feeling? Or would you like to hear about relationships? So I'm going to give you a window of a couple minutes to let me know what you'd like to hear about. If nobody answers, I'm going to choose one for you. But following suit, I am diligently working towards peeling back my beliefs about my community and my assumptions about my community. And instead, I'm really more interested to start learning. I'm entering a space of curiosity where I actually want to hear directly from people and let that become the thing. So Jessica is saying number 2, which is facing and feeling. By the way, hi, Jessica. Okay. I think you've won the lottery. So facing and feeling. Facing feelings we don't want to feel. So there's a couple different ways to approach this. Let me kind of hit the music for a second. what I've come to realize in my journey is that um, we have multiple different levels of what I would call the self. There's the level of just the body and the energy of the body itself, right? The physical body. And then we have our emotional levels, right? Then we have this whole emotional thing. And then we have the mental levels. Beyond the mental levels, we have something that we would call them the spiritual levels, right? So as we begin doing this work on ourselves, and I'm going to tell from my own personal story, I grew up in a way that, let's just say, I had a lot of difficult experiences growing up. I had a lot of struggles at home. I had a lot of struggles at school and friend groups. I carried around a lot of pain and feelings of unworthiness and feelings that I was not accepted, that I was not enough, that I wasn't lovable as is. And these feelings were painful. And I didn't know what to do with these feelings. I didn't know how to process them, how to work with them. And it kind of extended all the way through high school and into the beginning of college even. When I got to college, I started connecting with spirituality, specifically the practice of meditation. While meditation is an amazing practice that really helps to clear and settle and focus the mind, what I've later come to realize is that it was also for me a spiritual escapism. It was a way to enter into a zone where I felt this really peaceful, light, kind of graceful, energetic state that I could hang out in. And I didn't have to feel any of the painful feelings in my body. It was a sort of spiritual bypassing, if you will. As someone who's now been to many different meditation centers and different ashrams, while there are obviously, and of course, some really profound and powerful and authentic spiritual teachers and practitioners out there, I have also encountered a lot of people who go into the spiritual world or on the spiritual path because they don't want to have to confront their feelings. They don't want to have to feel certain things. And if you're sitting there trying to meditate and there's noises outside and you get all angry and, you know, you're now like upset that this peaceful feeling you had was ruined and now you have to feel these other feelings again, right? That doesn't sound very spiritual. It doesn't really sound like the point, that you get angry if things aren't working out the way that you wanted and your expectations aren't being fulfilled. And it was supposed to be like this, but it's not like that. And now I'm going to throw a tantrum and be enraged because I'm not getting the thing I want. Right. So while integrating my monkness back into my Sethness, I started to realize that I have all of these feelings, all of these stories, memories, and feelings that are asking to be felt and asking to be integrated. This process for me was difficult because I had built up a lot of resistance to having to feel these things. I thought that reacting to our feelings was a sign of weakness. I was ashamed of a lot of my own feelings. I felt out of control because of my feelings. And I was almost trying to stop and shove down and suppress. And, you know, I was efforting a lot to get away from, not have to feel. As time has progressed, I've come to learn that feelings are to be valued. There's valuable information in our feelings. Our feelings matter. Our feelings are a part of us. If I'm telling my feelings that I don't want to feel them, I'm also telling my feelings that they don't matter and that they're not important, which means I'm telling myself that I don't matter and I'm not important. So often the way we relate to our feelings is also tied to how we relate to ourselves, to our own feeling of worthiness, what we deserve, right? So as I have started connecting to my feelings, one of the most important discoveries, I guess you could say, that I made is that it actually feels good, even when it doesn't feel good. That to feel rage, to feel sadness, to feel fear, if I actually approach it from the perspective of, hey, like this is a part of me that's asking to be felt, it's a really beautiful, tender, and productive journey. one of the I was at a men's retreat this weekend, and one of the coaches of the men's retreat said, what if the monsters that we run away from are actually just the shadows of ants? And I thought about that, and it's true that my own feeling of let's say unworthiness, right, or my own feeling of unlovability, unlovability, right? As I started connecting to that feeling, which was so terrifying for me, right? I feel this terror, and beneath the terror was this resistance, and beneath that was this feeling. As I started feeling it, it was just an emotion. It was just an emotional energy. And the more that I let myself breathe, and it helps to place our hands on the part of the body that we feel the feeling. And as I would breathe and just kind of feel that feeling, that charge would slowly start to dissipate. That resistance would start to dissipate, and I would start to become more comfortable and familiar with that feeling. And then realize that the feeling itself is nothing to be afraid of. I was always afraid that if I felt that feeling, A, it would either be too powerful for me, B, that it might last forever, or C, that if I felt my feeling of unworthiness, it meant that it was true. It meant that I was admitting that I am unworthy. If I feel that feeling, it means it's right. If you live in a household and your dad comes in and says, you're a good for nothing, no good, no one will ever love you, piece of crap, right? You're going to push back and say, like, that's not true. You suck. I don't want to hear it, right? That you fight that feeling because you don't want to take that on. It feels gross and disgusting. You're fighting it. No, that's not true. That's not true. There's a part of you that heard that and actually believed it. And actually was like, fuck, maybe that is how I am. Then inside of yourself, you're going to both be feeling that way and be pushing, saying, no, it's not true, right? So now you're having this war inside yourself where you actually feel unworthy and you're fighting against unworthy. So you have this whole now dynamic that was happening outside of you, happening inside of you. And, if I feel my feeling of unworthiness, it means I'm letting my dad win, right? Or it means that he didn't love me, or it means that I am alone. And so as I feel my unworthiness, I have to feel my loneliness then too. And I have to feel my sadness connected to my dad. And I have to feel this whole thing that I was trying not to feel for 40 years. But eventually, as you feel these feelings, and again, for me, as I feel these feelings and slowly work through them, I start to develop this beautiful sense of tenderness and love towards myself. I start to see this really sweet and innocent person that just wanted to feel loved, that deserved love, that is so loving. I suddenly am seeing all of these gifts emerging out of that, right? This feeling of loneliness, as I connect to that, it's like, wow, the pain of that is so intense. This is really how much I value connection. This is how much I value love. The pain of this is how much I've struggled and striven spiritually to not feel this. The more I feel this loneliness, the more I really aspire to serve other people who are battling with their loneliness. That suddenly this feeling of loneliness turns into inspiration. As I feel the loneliness, suddenly I see, wow, this is just a story that I've been holding all these years, that you can never be alone. As if loneliness could ever even be real to begin with. Suddenly, as I feel this loneliness and I make friends with this and I stop fighting it, I'm not afraid of it. Suddenly I realized, like all of my anger towards my father was actually just my resistance to this feeling. And as I'm okay with this feeling, I look at him and I'm like, I just feel bad for you. I just feel sad, that you felt so alone and you had to push your son away, right? The more that we explore the places that scare us, the more that we go into these feelings, the more insights we start to get, the more it starts to unravel. And we drop into this place where we become softer, we become more loving, we become more caring, we become more compassionate. We also develop the wish to not harm anyone else, because I know how bad that feels in me. I don't want anyone else to ever have to feel that way too. That suddenly our ego goes out the window and these defense mechanisms start to unfold. the more that we get in touch with our feelings, the more we start to be integrated within ourselves. We start to feel relaxed and buoyant in our daily lives. We're not trying to run away from any situations. We know what we want and what we don't want, but we get to soften. We start to talk slower. We start to be more relaxed in our movements, right? That the world isn't scary anymore. There's nothing to fight against. So it shifts us away from this fight and flight mechanism. And as I begin loving my pain more, I also begin loving more in general. As I begin crying out the sadness, right? Crying out the fear, the more it's not a monster inside of me. It's actually a child that's just asking to be felt. And the deeper I go in this process, I just see it all around me. I see people around me. And when I see someone else who's afraid, I just immediately want to love them. I want to love them until they remember who they are, until they remember that they're bigger than that fear, until they remember that they can love their fear too, that the fear is just a passing cloud in the sky of who they are. Feelings, I've recently been reflected back, only need to last for seconds to minutes if we really let ourselves feel the feelings. If you really get with the feelings, they don't last that long. If you feel rage and you can connect to the rage, ah! Ah! Now I just feel like, and I feel the frustration, and I feel the sadness. I feel the sadness under the rage. And then I feel the little baby who's crying, the part of me that just and then slowly it starts to relax, and then slowly it starts to feel peaceful, and then slowly it's almost funny. And it's nice, and I feel, wow, and I've just processed that little chunk through, and I feel fine again, right? I'm back. If we allow ourselves to feel feelings, it can go by so quick, and we immediately become present back in our bodies. We immediately feel more grounded, more centered. There are times for us also where we begin to create an identity, right? I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. The world sucks. I hate everybody. I hate my life. This is a shitty situation. And we get this mood, and the mood continues, and it can continue for days or weeks or months or years, or we know people, all of us probably know people, and they're just kind of like, that's just part of their personality, just grumpiness or something. And that's because they've created a story. That's because they've created an identity and a belief system and a story around it. And that story served them, right? Maybe that's how they get attention. Maybe that's how they've gotten love. Maybe that's how they were rewarded in the past, right? Or maybe it stops them from having to try in life. Maybe it gives them an easy way out to stay lazy or to not fail, right? Or to not push themselves and maybe get rejected, or maybe confront their own boundaries or limitations, right? These stories, even though we suffer within these stories, they are also serving in some way to keep us in a comfortable zone. Even though it's just uncomfortable in there, it still keeps us in this comfortable, familiar zone. And we identify with these states. And, oftentimes depression is one of those, right? Depression is not a feeling. I know we say I feel depressed, and it's like, yeah, but depression, it's one of these identities. It's one of these long lasting things where there's a whole story and belief structure and narrative that's wrapped into that's producing certain feelings out of it. And you can feel the feelings around it, but at some point you also need to really look at, what are you doing and why? Why am I taking on this identity? Is it serving me? Do I really believe this? Is it just parts of me? Is this actually just like a defense mechanism? Am I just shutting down to the world? What's actually going on here, right? So it creates this real deep dive and really seeing for us, is this just my feeling? Have I just been resisting a feeling and I just felt it? I'm like, what the fuck? Like this unworthiness feeling that I've had for 40 years, all I had to do was just fucking feel it and cry a little bit. And suddenly it's gone and I feel fine. Was it that easy? Have I been running away from the shadow of an ant this whole time? Right? Or is that belief has been serving me, the self-pitying belief that allows me to stay small and not have to step into the fullness of who I am and what I could be. So while we start to get in touch with our feelings, as I mentioned before, finding where we feel these feelings and putting our hands on that part of the body and breathing into that, usually it's like around the chest, the heart area, it's the solar plexus, just under the ribs, it's around the belly button. Just breathing into that area and just being with, feeling that feeling. I'll even speak it out, right? I'll say, sometimes I feel afraid. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. Parts of me feel afraid. Parts of me feel overwhelmed, right? So just connecting to what's going on in there, speaking it out, giving it a voice, making a sound, right? And just letting that energy to start to be acknowledged and start to be moved a little bit. It really starts to open up and release the system. So Jessica's asking, any advice on empathizing with people who seem to fake their feelings? There's nothing more frustrating for her than people who seem very unaware of how disingenuous they come across as. Great. So this is a story, right? This is a story that you get to look at. And my question for you would be, if there's somebody who you are perceiving as faking their feelings, right? What does it bring up in you, right? You said it's frustrating for you, but I think that there's probably, let's go a little deeper. What's underneath the frustration? What is the story? What is the meaning you're making about that? Why do you care? Someone's faking their feelings. All right, so what? Why does that bother you? Is it because you feel like they're just doing it to get attention? Is that attention that you would rather be getting? Do you feel not seen? Right? Do you not feel seen? And so if other people are doing things to feel seen, they're taking the attention that you actually wish you could have, but you don't want to have to do something for it. What is the story in there? And that's I would say, a rich place to explore. For all of us, what is our biggest pet peeve, right? What are the things that really bother us about other people? What are the things that we get upset about? And then really looking, what are all of my feelings associated with that? What are all the different feelings connected to that? And if I felt those feelings, bringing it back and back and back to myself, right? Holding up my mirror, right? What is the point? Right? What is the point? What is the point? What is the point? What is the point? It's like a mantra we could always ask. Yeah. So what? What's the point? What's your point? What's my point? Anytime I'm angry at somebody and I notice that I'm like spinning in my head, angry at them, I'll be like, all right, like I'm blaming somebody in my head. What is my feeling? Right? Well, I feel, okay, like what is my feeling? Yeah, well, I feel annoyed and sad and frustrated. And so I was like, okay, and so what? What's the point? What's the point? Well, I want to feel safe. Oh, okay, you want to feel safe. So you're angry because you don't feel safe anymore. Yeah, I want to feel safe. Cool. So is yelling at this person in my head making me feel more safe? No. So how can I give myself the thing I want? So Jessica is saying this person has really struggled, and time has been invested to help this person. This person has struggled with relationships, eating disorders, etc. And the time that's invested seems like wasted energy. Yes. So if there is somebody who doesn't want to actually genuinely, authentically face themselves, it is wasted energy. Correct. You cannot help somebody that does not want to be helped, actually, who's not actually ready to look at themselves. If you're not ready to genuinely, authentically, actually look at yourself, nobody can do anything. If you say that it's too painful and it's too scary and I don't want to do it, you will win that conversation 100% of the time. Cool. Then you will now receive the karma of someone who believes that their own feelings are too scary, right? So this is really difficult, Jess, especially for people like us who actually care about others and want to help them, is to see how somebody's suffering and truly from the bottom of our hearts want to love them and serve them and support them, and also recognizing, yeah, but also recognizing that some people will be black holes, in that sense of that they don't actually want to work in themselves. They just want some sort of connection. They just want enablers, right, around them. And it is difficult, but once you see that, then it comes down to setting boundaries, and it comes down to being clear about what we're not available for anymore. And that can hurt and be sad, but we can also know that sometimes people need to hit that wall before they're willing to change, right? Sometimes we actually have to walk away from people so that they have to face themselves. And the longer that we stay in that field as the fixer, as the doer, as the helper, as the supporter, we're not going to help them in that role. Right. And setting boundaries is what you've come to, just for those who aren't able to read the chat. And so this now comes full circle, right? Is that Jessica started feeling frustrated at this other person or people for faking their feelings. But full circle, it comes down to her just saying that she is learning to set better boundaries for herself, and maybe even struggles with setting boundaries, therefore is upset at people who do this thing because her struggles with setting boundaries, right? And that's like a really beautiful example. And thank you, Jess, for being vulnerable and sharing that, and allowing your situation to be a teaching moment for everybody here. So I really appreciate that. And we all do this in different ways, right? We all have the things that we're struggling with that we don't know how to do or what to do with. And so we blame outwardly instead of acknowledging innerly, right? So it's a really beautiful practice of just bringing it back, always bringing it back to yourself, right? Feeling the feelings, where are the feelings, bringing it back. So for this short practice tonight, let's take a moment and just place our hands on our hearts. I'm actually feeling under the weather. The men's group I had, a couple people came down feeling sick, so I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm getting the thing they had, right? So we put our hands hand over the heart. And if when you put your hands on your heart, this feels really good and connective and nurturing for you, perfect, leave it there. If you do this and it feels like a little bit too restrictive or not claustrophobic, but like a little bit too tight, you can actually float your hands out a little bit, kind of floating out, where you're still kind of in the field of energy, right? We have the biofield, we have then the emotional field, a little bit out. We have the lower mental field. Beyond that is the upper mental field. Beyond that, it's the personal soul field. And beyond that, it's the universal soul field. So as we just connect to our emotional energy, which is a solid touch on the body, kind of like a hug. We just take a moment to feel, right? So placing your hands on your heart as if you're almost, excuse me, almost like giving your heart a little hug. And see what's happening in your heart, and really seeing what is asking to be felt, right? Is there fear? Is there loneliness, sadness, grief, anger, frustration, disappointment, confusion? There's also going to be parts of you that are happy and joyful and loving and relaxed, and those are lovely, and definitely feed those. And this is a great opportunity to bring up anything within you that you're afraid of, anything you struggle with. Any feeling that you haven't really wanted to face on your own or known how to. Just taking a couple breaths into your hand. You can close your eyes. And really just asking, what parts of me, what parts of me need support right now? What parts of me are asking for guidance? And if you're feeling anguish, just placing your hands on the body and just breathing and feeling that feeling. Taking this moment to really viscerally acknowledge yourself. Allowing our energy to sink down from our head into our body and really just being with the feelings wherever we feel them. And feel free to speak it out, what you feel, right? Sometimes I feel anguish. Sometimes I feel frustrated. Sometimes I feel alone. Just see what words really resonate with how you feel with the party that's really searching for support. What is it saying? No part of you is bad. No part of you is wrong. No part of you is broken. You don't need to be fixed. Generally, we're just in pain and we're not resourced enough. We don't have enough energy to move through it. So this is just a way to start bringing some energy, some energetic resources into our emotions to allow them to resolve. Breathing into the hands. Sometimes I feel stuck. Sometimes I feel terrified. Sometimes I feel all alone. These feelings are nothing to be afraid of. These feelings are to be embraced. Breathing into the feelings of love, of care, and also that feeling of stillness. That feeling of grace that's coming through. This peaceful frequency that's starting to emerge. And taking some deep breaths. And bringing your hands up above your head as if strings are pulling them up, strings that are connecting the stars in the sky. And I want you to breathe in through your mouth as if you're sipping air through a straw. Tilt your head back, heart up. And breathing out through the nose, slowly lowering the hands. And then again, in through the mouth, like you're inhaling through a straw. Lifting the hands, palms facing each other, up as if they're being pulled up into the stars. Head tilts back. Relaxing out through the nose. And one last time, palms facing each other, being pulled up as if by strings, up to the stars. Hands going up, palms facing each other, head tilting back, heart sticking out. And out through the nose, relaxing. Softening. When you're ready, coming back, opening your eyes. Hope you feel a little bit better, connected a little bit more. Stay tuned for the launch of my virtual program in a few weeks. I'm going to take care of myself, drink some water. Thank you all for joining another exciting edition of Tuesday Night Live. TNL, Tuesday Night Live. Peace out.